Hey folks, welcome back to another edition in the Explainer series. In today's video, we'll take a look at how to answer pricing questions in PM interviews. One of the most important things to remember about price is that it's not just a number that you put on your product. Amongst other things, price indicates how much you value your company, your brand, and your customers. In fact, price is one of the first things that actually pushes a customer against buying your product or towards buying your particular product. Whenever you're asked a pricing question in an interview, the goal is not for you to come up with an actual number for the price, but it's more on how to think about pricing as a strategy after, say, doing your analysis around the entire situation at hand. Now, how do you go about doing this particular analysis? Here are a few steps you can follow. What you try and do here is you try and get a basic idea of the entire situation at hand. First thing you try to do is, what is the product all about? What are some of the features in that particular product? Learn everything as much as you can about the product at hand. The second step is for you to think about the customer. Who are they? Put out an entire customer persona chart if possible, and understand why is the problem an actual problem for them, right? What is the problem that the customers are facing? Why is the problem a problem for them? And the brownie points, if you can even put down some form of a severity rating, in the sense that on a scale of 1 to 10, how severe is this particular problem to them? The next step for you to do is to try and identify who or what is this company? What are some of the strengths, weaknesses of the company? Is it, say, operating in multiple industries? Does it have lots of capital sitting idle? Whatever you can get about the company. Once you've done these preliminary steps, it's time to go one level deeper. The first question you want to ask here is, what is the goal of the company? Now, you've got to understand that pricing generally comes into picture once the customer base has been understood, once the problem has been understood, and the product or the solution has also been built. Once all three things are there, then pricing comes into picture. Now, depending on the price that you set, or depending on the goal that you have, it's vice versa, the price or the goal can actually vary. For example, if the company at this point decides to enter a market that is, say, highly competitive and is very crowded, the company might decide to, go very low in pricing. Or if it decides to have profits early on, then it might decide to price really high. Now, that is going to depend on the goal of the company at that particular point, given all of the factors around industry, competition, and so on. So understand what the goal of the company is. Second thing to look at is the competition. Again, like I said, if it's a very competitive market, you're probably looking at some sort of a market penetration or being a price leader, some sort of a strategy around that. If it's, say, a market where you're entering a market where there is no competition, maybe it's a blue ocean strategy, or it's some sort of you're in a monopolistic environment, then prices are completely up to you to dictate. So understand what the competition is all about. The next question is, try and figure out, is there a brand or an aspirational element to the product or offering? Oftentimes, if you have a brand element into it, or it's an aspirational element into it, like, say, for example, iPhones, you have a larger room to price your particular product. If you're selling something that's commodity, then there is much lesser room for you to move prices around. Then the next thing to look at is willingness to pay. When you're looking at willingness to pay, understand what are, say, some of the alternatives to the customer. Have that very basic idea as to how much is this customer going to be willing to pay for this particular offering, given that scenario that they are in, given the problem it solves for them. And this willingness to pay will differ. If it's an enterprise, it will be different. If it's a small, medium business, it's going to be different. If it's B2C, then if you're looking at youngsters, teenagers, it's going to be different versus parents versus elderly. So understand or put a very rough idea as to what their willingness to pay is going to be depending on the customer base. The last step for you to do is to think about the costs for making this particular product. Costs are going to be really important for, say, physical goods, or when you're trying to offer a service where, say, for example, delivery as a service, logistics, cost is involved in it. So understand what the cost is, because a lot of times companies might decide, hey, I want to go 10%, 20% above cost, or I want to stay 10, 20% below cost, depending on the strategy. Maybe they want to stay 10% below cost because they want to demotivate their competition, or they want to stay 10% higher because they have to make profit. So again, try and understand the cost it takes to make that particular product or service. Given this analysis you've done, it's time to pick some pricing strategies that would work. The list that I'm going to tell you is not a comprehensive list. It's only a good list for you to get started with. Of course, it's great if you can read up on each of these strategies and also think of other strategies that you can actually come up with. So the first strategy that you can think of is price skimming. This is a strategy that you would see often used in mobile phones. The strategy here is essentially that you start off at a price that's really high, for the top end of the market, and then gradually as time progresses, you reduce the price so that you get the customers who had a lesser willingness to pay to also kind of purchase your product. Like I said, you often notice this with mobile phones. A mobile phone that's priced at 50,000 to start with, after 6 to 8 months, you see it come down to 40,000, and then after maybe a year and a half, you see it probably come down to 35,000. Next strategy is market penetration strategy. This is the opposite of price skimming. What you do here is you price really low so that you enter that market and you get as much market share as possible, as many customers to buy your product. And once they're used to it, once they've become maybe loyal to some extent, then you increase your prices gradually. An example of this is Jio, and another example of this is Amazon Prime. Next strategy is premium pricing. iPhones, BMW, Audi cars, anything that is luxury is a prime example of premium pricing. If the product that you are looking at has some form of aspirational element to it, then premium pricing can work wonders. Next strategy is bundled pricing. What you do here is that you club high value and low value goods together, and you sell them at a price that is lesser than each of those products sold individually. So the bundle is actually priced lesser than each of the products sold individually. The advantage with this is that some of your low value products which don't see any sales actually will now see sales because you're bundling them together. An example of this could be, say, when Google actually launched its speakers, or when Amazon launched speakers, they kind of used to bundle it with other physical goods, like for example, laptops or some other durables. And the goal here is to get the inventory moving quickly, get customers to buy this, and then once they buy it, they use it, and then they obviously like the product, and so they're going to buy it again. Another strategy you could look at is freemium pricing. Freemium pricing is where you offer a free version for the customers, a basic version for free, but then in case customers wants to actually upgrade to a more advanced version, then they have to pay a particular amount. Now this one works well for software or SaaS products. You'll notice that SaaS companies often follow this particular method. If in your interview you're asked to price a SaaS product, then freemium pricing is something that you got to look at really closely. Once you define strategy, the last thing for you to now do is to think about how you're going to set the frequency of the purchase. Your product in itself could actually be used at a certain natural frequency by your customer, but then do you really want to actually kind of make the payment at that exact frequency? So for example, Spotify has, say, a monthly plan. If it instead decided that, hey, every song you listen to is going to be paid, it's a huge pain to the customer, right? Netflix versus Amazon Prime, if you think about it, Amazon says, hey, here's a bundle, yearly you pay me $1,000. Netflix says, well, I give you weekly options, monthly options, yearly options, everything is available for you. You can choose what you want. So think about what is that frequency that you want your customer to pay at. Like I said, pricing is not a very simple thing. There are so many factors that go into pricing. Hopefully the strategy and structure presented above makes some sense to you guys and helps you answer that pricing question. So that concludes the video for the day. If you have any questions or if you have any comments, please do let us know in the comment section and we'll respond back to you. Reference sheet is attached below for your reference. And so until next time, bye-bye.